kind of tell you a little bit about how this evolved, but first I want to introduce Heather. Her and her husband Tyler are the owners of Bracco's down here, and we're thrilled to have. She said, "Jay, don't make me speak." So I'm not making her speak, but our intent is, and as I go through this, Terri and I started to do podcasts, and Brian's already videotaped a couple of them in our office, and she wanted to call it Wine with Terri and Jay, and I didn't know if she spelled that with an H referring to me, or the fact that I like wine. But as we talked about it, we decided that if we're going to do this, we have friends that own a couple different wine shops, and we'd like to come down and support them and introduce you to their beautiful facility down here. For those of you that don't know, have never been down here, please, when we get done, walk around, talk to the people, meet it, buy drinks, have fun. It'll be a great time. We're going to introduce the people as we go through this. This is Trevor from Johnson's Brothers.
Professional drinker.
He is actually going to do the wine tasting for us and all the presentation. I was in here right before Valentine's Day, and I bought 2 tickets to come, and Heather says, "Who are you going to bring?" She said, "I don't know, I'll bring my date Fred." That's what they wanted me to bring. So Fred, my day drinking buddy here, has partied with me numerous times. But
didn't ask me, pal. I was free.
You know, he offered purse, and he's closer to my height. No person. We're going to do our estate planning, wills, trust, little thing with Ann here, and kind of go through that, and when we get done, we'll open it up for questions, and we'll present the final wine. Thanks for being here, Trevor.
Thank you. So, speaking about commodities, have you ever considered investing in your own personal happiness with a bottle of wine? Cheers. No, but seriously, so I'm really happy to have you all here. Thank you for allowing me to share my love for the Orange Swift portfolio with you.
Thank you.
Orange Swift is really known for the ripeness of their wines. So you typically get a higher ABV from all the sugar content when you're actually fermenting that. Orange Swift is designed, his idea is that what is the joy in cellaring something for 40 years that you might never drink, right? Wine, of course, appreciates in value over time, which is really cool. A lot of really interesting things happen in the cellar and in that bottle. But he believes that you should be able to crack open a bottle of wine and enjoy it the day that you buy it. I mean, I prefer opening my wine when I get it. I don't know about you guys. But yeah, so thoughts on this wine? Tasty, right?
Yeah.
Super cool. Awesome. Well,
EBV is acronym for.
ABV is alcohol by volume.
All right. So we were just going to start, Ann, with just having you talk a little bit about the types of law that you practice.
Absolutely. So estate planning is my primary area, but what does that mean, right? You have a lot of people say, "Oh, I do estate planning." It basically means I plan for death and disability. So if you were to become disabled, do you have things in place like powers of attorney? If you were to die, do you have a will or a trust? Do you have your beneficiaries done? That's what estate planning is. But I also deal with the periphery issues of that, like guardianships, conservatorships for people that didn't plan, probates for when you didn't plan, or trusts, real estate issues, and business issues. But estate planning is where it all comes from.
Great. One of the things that we also were wondering about is some of the pitfalls that can come about from when you're trying to do estate planning.
Well, especially do-it-yourself estate planning. So, and I bring this up because it's pretty common that somebody says, "Oh, I'll just get it on Google, right? I'll go look it up." And I've been doing estate planning for 23 years now. That makes me old. But what I tell people is I review estate plans for free, and I've been doing it that entire time, and never one time from when somebody has brought that in for me to review it, and they've done it from the internet, has it been right. Doesn't mean it wasn't legally binding, but it wasn't what they would have wanted had they gotten the advice. So just take that for what it is. When you're seeing an estate planning attorney, it's not for the piece of paper. It's for putting the beneficiaries the right way. It's for having the right people in the right places. So that's why you really shouldn't do it yourself, is you're gonna mess it up.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I told Ann in the group last week, one of the biggest beefs I have is people come in and we start, when we do a financial plan for people, we go through their entire documents, whether it's insurance, investments, employee benefits and everything. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at an estate plan and I said, in the trust they put together, and I said, "Oh, that's great," but they never funded it, you know. They just don't understand that. So anyhow, talk what happens, and if somebody happens to die and they don't have things in order.
I make a lot of money. So actually,
Okay, all of you forget.
right, actually, I jokingly say, I make more money when people don't listen to me. But one of the most important things is intestate law. And intestate law is the law of the state, right? That's what the rules are if you didn't plan. The one that people goof up the most is believing that your assets go to your spouse, okay? Intestate law says if you are married and you have children of the same union, you get the first 100,000 plus half. I don't know why, it's just the law. Doesn't make any sense, it's not what anybody would have picked, but that's what the law is. If you have kids that are not of the same union, it's half. So again, people are believing their assets are gonna pass to their spouse, and that's not really what would happen if they rely on intestate law. So that's your first and most common mistake that people should try to not have happen.
All right, some of the mistakes that people make, like you said, is with not necessarily trying to do it themselves. The other thing is when we have someone come into the office, we talk a lot about the registration. Should we kind of be an individual? Should we have it joint with survivor? Joint, there's all kinds of different joint things you can do. But what? Or not, but, you know, what do people need to consider when they're looking at the registration of an account? And what trumps the other? Does a will or the registration, what do they need to think about?
So actually the most important part of your estate planning is your titling. And what I mean by that is, do you have stuff in your own name? Do you have a joint tenant? Does it have a beneficiary on it? And the reason for that is title trumps any documents I do. So if I've got a will, right, and yet I have something titled jointly with my oldest son, that asset goes to my son. It doesn't matter that my will said it goes to my 3 kids. So the first thing to understand about what Terry said is title is important. The next thing I want to talk about though is that the most common mistake I see is the use of joint tenancy. Joint tenancy, generally speaking, should only be used between a husband and wife, okay? The reason for that is when you add a joint tenant on your account, you are subjecting yourself to the creditors of the joint tenant. So mom or dad, they get older, they put their adult child on there, right? That parent is now subject to that kid getting divorced, having a car accident, having a business go bad. They subjected them to their creditors, when a power of attorney would have given all the access to that document with none of the risk. So why would you ever put somebody in that position, okay? The other issue is specifically with real estate. I don't know how long you let me get to go on about this. So real estate is a big one, right? Again, parents age and they say, hey, well, I'll just put my kid as a joint tenant on there. Well, now, not only did you subject mom and dad to losing their house, right? But you also lost a certain tax benefit called capital gains tax. Let me explain what that means. Mom and dad bought a house, $20,000. It's worth $100,000. That's not at all accurate in today's market, but let's just use those numbers, right? So let's say that you don't lose it for a creditor. Well, you put them on the house, they have the same basis you do, that same $20,000. They sell it at death, they're gonna pay capital gains tax on the difference between the $20,000 and the sales price. Capital gains tax is about, let's say 20%, 15 for the Fed, 5 for the state. If they had inherited that asset, gave it through a will, a trust, or a beneficiary deed, there is an ability to name beneficiaries on real estate, they would get a step up in basis, have 0 capital gains tax, okay? So who wants to swap 0 for 20? Now, in full disclosure, there is an inheritance tax, but inheritance tax to your children is 1%. So 1% versus 20, nobody would have done that if they got planned, if they planned.
Currently still in place.
Yeah.
Correct. They were the new administration that was on.
That's federal. Federal estate tax is always subject to change. We've had a Nebraska inheritance tax for a long time with very few changes, and it's been 1% for general beneficiaries, for, I should say, descendants, kids and stuff like that.
One quick question is, you had mentioned if you had a power of attorney. So when you're looking at legal documents, what are the baseline legal documents that someone would need to have even in any situation?
So pretty much every adult should have a power of attorney, financial, medical, and living will. And I'm also saying this if your kids are going off to college, right? You want to be able to have somebody make your decisions for your money if you're in the hospital. You want them to be able to make a medical decision for you. And you probably want a living will. That's the direction with whole life support if you're terminally ill. So that's a baseline, even if you don't have a dime, right? The alternative, if you don't have that, is guess what? You get to go to court. Once again, I make more money. So that whole guardianship conservatorship thing is for people that don't have powers of attorney. Powers of attorney are very inexpensive, right? I think I charge $350, so very inexpensive to get that sort of stuff taken care of. Wills, trusts, beneficiary designations are very dependent on the person. So you take your assets, your circumstances, and you're either gonna need a will, or you're gonna need to make sure all your assets have a beneficiary, or you're gonna have a trust. And those are all very different on how they're used based on your individual circumstances.
Get the assets out of here and bleed them down before, so they can go to my kids before Uncle Sam takes them all. And so we like to put together, she's actually provided us with a nice little question and answer thing that we use to kind of go through with that and help determine it. Yeah, and Bruce will tell you this, he's in a similar business, but the reality of the things that we do, we cross over into accounting, we cross over into the legal field, but we're not CPAs, we're not attorneys. And so what we've chosen to do, and try to put ourselves out there, we collaborate with people like Ann and some of the accounting firms that we work with. And there's been times we've been in our board meeting with Ann, the CPA, and we put this whole thing together. We're brainstorming with the clients right there and trying to understand exactly what they want to do with it.
And sometimes the other way to get in is to say something like, you don't want to give too much money to the government, that helps. You know, and I'm not saying that it's tax driven, or, you know, or the elder law issue of, well, should you be planning? You know, and I'm not saying that that is for everybody, because Medicaid planning is not necessarily for the wealthy, it's usually a little bit less wealthy, but they do want to know, right? So a lot of
Can
times
you
just
do
say,
that?
yeah, absolutely, and say that I'd sit down and talk to them, and then can I show them, here's how it works, and it's a free consultation. So the concept is, and again, there's a lot of good attorneys in town, so, you know, it's basically get them to talk to somebody about the concept. And then as long as that's an expert, somebody who does it, they hopefully will be able to be told when they're in there why they need us.
And the last one, I'm sorry, I don't want to change this whole thing, I'm just trying to get some information.
That's okay, that's good.
So let's say kids don't figure it out in time, God forbid, something happens to mom or dad. Are you able to come in, I mean, let's say you started the conversation and then it went south. Are you able to come in and help protect assets and, you know, retroactively, for
It's
lack of a better
harder.
term?
It is a lot
Certainly harder,
harder,
but are there resources that you
Yeah.
can bring to bear to help protect the kids and figure this whole mess out?
yes, but it's harder. But I mean, a lot of times it's, do you even have a power of attorney? And does the power of attorney let us do some of the planning? And if you don't, I'm gonna have to go to court to
Okay.
get power over their person or their money. Now, can I do it? Yes. But, you know, again, a lot more costly to do it when I don't have them able to help.
Who does it go to? The state?
No, the money won't go to state. That's not intestate law thing, right? Intestate law says there's a rule, but nobody's in charge. So you're gonna go to a lawyer. A lawyer's gonna go to court, give somebody power, and then they're gonna gather the assets and follow that rule. But now you've got court supervision, court rules, and may or may not follow what you like.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay.
And a couple things that I want to mention too is that a lot of people don't know, like you have a lot of questions. So she briefly mentioned that she offers a free consultation, and we really encourage people to take advantage of that. So we can even offer that in our office. She'll come to our office and meet with you, with us there to help.
Liberty one.
They'll be fine.
We can make that happen,
We can make it happen.
Yes.
Definitely can make that happen.
It's a rule.
But get your questions answered, you know, don't sit on the sideline, act now, and she's a great resource. And with thinking about that too, one of the things that we look at is how do you decide, do you need a will, do you need a trust? What is important in making that decision?
Right. I'm gonna kind of cover the three sort of plans very quickly, or hopefully. So when you have minor children, does anybody have minor kids in here still? Okay. When you have minor children, the kind of estate plan you're gonna have is gonna be that thing where you're gonna have a will, okay? Now, one of the things I didn't say is wills guarantee probate. Wills go through court, that's how they work, okay? And I'm only saying that because a lot of people come to me and they say, well, I have a will, I don't go through probate. That piece of paper is gonna have to go to court. But if you have minor children, the court is where you're gonna get your guardians, okay? So you're gonna have a will, and you're gonna have that thing called a testamentary trust. I'm gonna take care of the money for my kids till I decide they're old enough, okay? That's what people that have minor situations. Then when I have all adult kids or no kids, I'm looking at two primary planning tools. One of them is, can I use beneficiaries for everything, okay? And the way that's gonna work is my life super simple, okay? And I don't know about you guys, but I don't have that many families that are actually that straightforward, okay? But if they are, what that means is you have 3 kids, they're all great with money, I don't have any special needs kids, I don't have any problems, everything is totally great and they get along. You can name a beneficiary on everything, okay? That plan is where beneficiaries become primary and we do a will as a backup, never planning to use it, because the will is only there for the oopses, which I hope you don't have, or the things I can't control, car accident, medical malpractice, mystery asset that comes in after death. When I don't have that, let me give you some good examples of that. I have 4 kids, they live all over the country. Can they really all sell the house and handle the administration, or do we want one kid in charge? A trust allows you to do that. A trust is like an entity with rules after death. Does that make sense? So now I can put one person in charge instead of all 4. The larger the family, the more likely the trust is going to be the option. Or I have somebody who shouldn't have the money outright, okay, even if they're an adult. Or I have special needs, or I have a farm I want to have held in trust till the kids reach 65. You know, so whatever it is, if I have any control I want after death, or I have anybody that doesn't get along, or I have spouses I don't like, the trust is the better tool because it has options. So what I'm looking at is super simple family can save some money and do beneficiary planning. Anything that has any complexity, a trust is the tool. Okay?
Thanks.
We're gonna bring Trevor back up. We're gonna introduce the third wine, and then we'll come back and finish the last couple segments and open it up for additional questions that we might have.
So what's your favorite?
My favorite in the Orange Swift portfolio are out of these 3. So Machete, I like. It's a little bit of a higher ABV. I think this one falls at about 15.1%. I really like those really ripe wines. Typically higher ABVs, a little bit forward. Yeah, I like bombs in my mouth basically. 8 Years in the Desert is also really, really lovely. I believe Heather has about 6 or 7 bottles of 8 Years in the Desert here too. That is the replacement for The Prisoner. It is the only inventory, or some of the remaining inventory in the state for last season's release. The new one won't be released until probably July or August. So just some kind of a really good idea to maybe pick up a bottle of that if you're looking to add to your collection, especially when you're able to do side-by-sides as a vertical, just to kind of see how those grapes change year over year, because basically wine is just a time capsule for a specific year, the growing conditions, the terroir, the water, the sun. So you just get a lot of different expressions year over year, and I really, really appreciate that.
Or whatever, and we can custom design a wine tasting on the spot. Same with the bourbon tasting, scotch, vodka, you know, whatever you like, we can make it happen.
Can we get these lovely charcuterie trays as well?
Every single day.
Also,
Amazing what you can pay for that.
Thank you.
real fun too, recently they've added a Coravin program to the bar. So with weekly featured wines, it'll typically be behind by the glass pours off the wall. So Heather will probably pick a wine or 2 every week. Featured as a $20+ pour. So it's just really great to try new wines that you otherwise might be averse to buying a full bottle of. It just kind of provides a little bit more access, which I really enjoy.
Right, and a lot of our wines are small boutique wines where they're making 300 cases a year, that it's wine you would never try and you wouldn't want to spend $95 on just kind of a, maybe it's good. So with the, like Trevor said, the Coravin program, this gives us the opportunity to let you taste it and either buy by the bottle or buy by the glass. So.
And so if you have whatever child it is that's you put in charge of executing a will or delegating how the trust is played out. Mm-hmm. So is there some concern that if you pick some child that all of a sudden is greedy and wants to change things in their benefit, What protects the other kids from
It's a
that?
good question. So actually, when you serve in a role like a trustee or an executor, you are what's called a fiduciary. And that means you have a responsibility greater than yourself, right? Your responsibility is to the trust and the trust document. So if you breach that duty, that's something you can get sued on, right? And sued by your beneficiaries. And the court doesn't look very favorably on people breaching their fiduciary duties. That being said, hopefully you never get there. So it really does go back to the issue of picking the right person. And if you're uncertain, sometimes that person is a third party or a trust company. But they actually have a duty to do what the document says. If it says goes equally to my 3 kids, they can't take more for themselves, okay? If it says this farm goes to the brother and they hate their brother, they can't keep it. So they not only have to do what it says, but they have to do it in the best interest of the whole. And let me tell you where this is complicated as a lawyer who does the administrations. I have had oftentimes, I have one beneficiary who's a trustee who doesn't like something, right? And I'll have to tell him, that's your beneficiary interest. You might need a separate representation as a beneficiary. I represent you as a trustee or a fiduciary. Your job is to do what this document says in the best interest of everybody. So, a good question.
Or maybe you get a corporate trustee if you got more than one kid.
Yeah, that actually, corporate trustee, they cost money. It's like 1% of what they're managing, but you know what? They don't have a personal interest. This is what they do every day. They typically have a group. So whenever you have a complex or the more blended the family is, the corporate trustee is a really good way to handle that kind of administration.
Is that less expensive?
Nope.
More expensive?
Yeah.
But smarter probably.
You're looking at a more equitable resolution.
You're looking at my family still gets along later, and somebody did the job right. But yeah.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. Finish up the wine. There's a couple tables that have a few glasses on it. Don't let them go unused. Fred's only good for once. Come up here if you want something real stiffer.
Get to work, Fred. Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.